Good afternoon, and I want to look at today examining parent involvement. Parent involvement in the educational process, especially family involvement in general, is very important. And I want to look at an article that examines parent involvement in and perceptions of special education services. This was a study done by a group of 3 authors, Sammy Spann, Frank Kohler, and Delane Sonkinson. I hope I'm pronouncing those right. But the purpose of this study that they did was to investigate family involvement and the perceptions of children in the special education services. So what's going on in schools, particularly for those families who do have special ed children. And then the main focus is on those children who do find themselves on the autism spectrum. And so we start this article with 4 questions. Now, the main 4 questions of this study kind of drive where we're going to go the rest of the way. Question 1 being, what is the amount and nature of special education services that children receive from their school? What is the frequency and quality of communication that parents have with teachers and other personnel at their child's school? Excuse me. Number 3, what is the nature of parents' knowledge about and involvement in their child's IEP process? And then number 4, what is the nature of parents' priorities and how much are they satisfied overall with their child's special education services? Now, before we do go on, I wish to apologize about my voice. It is going a little bit. The Chicago Cubs have been in the playoffs for the last 2 days, so I've been following that, which has caused some yelling at the TV and a little bit of some hoarseness in my voice. So bear with me. Now we're going to look at some of the age groups of these students. And so we have students broken down into 4 different age groups. The first being 4 to 5 years old, so pretty much the preschool right before kindergarten, before we're getting into the traditional public school setting. And then we're looking at 6 to 9 years old, 10 to 14 years old, and 15 to 18 years old. And then those 4 questions that kind of drove everything, these parents of these students are then interviewed and asked more questions. With the first one being, the first kind of subgroup of that is communication with school personnel. And so then there's 4 more questions to go along with that, which are, how often do you communicate with the personnel at your child's school? What do you communicate with? Who do you communicate with? So are we looking at a teacher, an aide, a principal, or somebody else who works in the building? 3, what is a common reason for this communication? And then number 4, what is your degree of satisfaction with homeschool communication? The next subgroup is going to be your IEP, and this is, I feel like this one's really, really important. What is your degree of knowledge with the IEP document? What is your degree of involvement with the IEP document and meetings? And then what is your overall degree of satisfaction with the IEP process? The final one, the priorities. As a parent, are you more pressing concerns or priorities for your child at this time? What skills or competencies do your child need most help with? To what extent are school personnel and other services currently addressing these areas? And then what is your overall level of satisfaction with your school's ability to address your child's needs? And then they kind of go on and show us the answers to these. They show us some charts, and kind of looking at the charts, you have tables 2, 3, 4. If we keep going here, 5 and 6. And that kind of gives us the answers that parents gave, and then we have parent comments. What really stuck out to me, though, and this was kind of, as I'm reading, just it blows my mind, the fact that 83% of parents of children in the oldest age group, so that high school age group, believe that the schools were doing little or nothing to address their child's needs. That, very concerning. It's going to stand out. The next one is that parents express low satisfaction, and nearly half of parents in that high school age group notice that they're not satisfied with their school efforts. Again, none of that's very good to hear. The discussion, the end, the majority of children spent part of their day in general ed. Many families reported that they communicated with school on a regular basis. the majority of parents believe that they were moderately to highly knowledgeable about the child's IEP process. Again, another really important aspect of the education process. And then parents identified a host of pressing needs. If we keep going on further and looking at kind of the comments that are being made and kind of the pressing needs, we look at a number of parents indicated that their school did most of the work to maintain correspondence. So the school is not reaching out with them. The parents are going to reach out to the school. The only time the teacher sends home anything is for negative behavior or something negative. And then parents lamented that the only time she's communicated with is her child's quarterly IEP meetings. Now, I will say this, it's not all bad. There are a lot of good things. What we see, some positives, the teachers encourage my child to socialize with other children in the school. My child's teachers have been concerned and compassionate. And then finally, the teacher has been willing to listen and is open to my suggestions. So it's not all bad. When we look at these things, it's not all terrible. And one of the big discrepancies that I've noticed when I read this was that it seems the more the younger the student, the better contact, the more positive the feedback that they have with these students and their families and everything else. And so it just kind of goes to show you how important it is. I will say this, they did note in the article that what they did not get was the other side of the spectrum. So what do the teachers, what do the school personnel have to say? And I think that's really important as well. And so if we look at this, basically the understanding is that the younger grades, parents do feel very connected to school. The older grades, they do not. And there's a disconnect, and there needs to be more research done. We need to figure out what we can do in order to help these students.